All right, we're seeing everyone starting to trickle in a little bit. And I can say this even with people that are trickling in. We're recording this, as it just said, and we'll make sure we're going to make it available to on our YouTube channel and our social media channels, etc., kind of after the fact, as a lot of people have been kind of like reviewing it that way. So anyway, we'll just kind of go from that standpoint.
I'm dealing with a bit of a cold here, like I think half the world right now.
No
So
worries.
I'm
No
trying to
worries.
do my nose blows with the camera off. But if I forget, my
And
apologies right off the get-go.
more
Yeah,
importantly,
make
more
sure you
importantly with more importantly with the mute on. That's actually the camera on.
Again, I'm going to try my best to remember. I had a call early this morning and it was touch and go, but yeah.
No worries. Well, you know what? Let's just get back. Let's just get started right off the bat, because I know we have not so much a hard stop, but definitely want to be respectful of everyone's time. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. My name is Ramon Lowe. I am the Director of Membership and Industry Engagement for the Airport Minority Advisory Council, and this is well, this was formerly known as the Third Friday Membership Meeting, and we have since kind of rechristened it and rebranded it to AMAC 360. And why do we call it AMAC 360? Well, I think traditionally it's been myself or someone from the national office who's just been coming on here and kind of spouting off or sharing, news from the national office and our committees and chairs and chapters and such. That will still continue. I do have some announcements, but what we are doing moving forward is inviting a lot of subject matter experts, thought leaders within our industry, as you kind of see here, and tackling certain topics that I believe are going to be of value and very educational for our members. So with that, just a little bit of housekeeping items I want to mention. We have some very key events that are coming up. We have our Economic Opportunity and Policy Forum, which takes place March 13th through the 15th. I'm going to go ahead. Whoa, there he goes. First foil of the new year. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of copy and paste the link to that page in the chat. And essentially what the Econ Forum, if you are able to attend, and we very much urge you to attend, it is our opportunity to go to DC on the Hill and kind of lobby a lot of our lawmakers to obviously protect and preserve the airport, the APB program, which we know has been under attack, and amongst many other programs have been under attack in the last better part of the year. So it really isn't hyperbole when I say it would be great for you to come support our lawmakers, our agenda by attending, sponsoring and attending. If you're able to do so, please attend it. It is being overseen by our Senior Manager of Operations and Programs, Andre Titus. And again, it takes place March 13th through the 15th in DC. The second thing is on the theme of events, we are our ACB Airport Business Diversity Conference, August 3rd to the 7th in Nashville. Thank you to our friends at Nashville International Airport, our co-hosts and sponsors for this year. It is going to be, as if you've ever attended an AMAC conference before, you know it's going to be very, very productive from a networking, educational standpoint, but also we're looking to make sure that all the connections that are made at the conference are going to help elevate you professionally, personally, etc. So I will make sure that the link to register is in the chat. I do want to make mention, I just said link to register. We will be opening registration in early February. So why is that important? Well, it's important because obviously you want to get in there and register. But also there will be a period where we will make the rates at an early bird rate available. So you definitely want to take advantage of that. Get your registration in at the lower rate. And also, more importantly, make sure you reserve your room, because I know we had those challenges when we sold out in San Antonio in 2023. Get involved, join a committee. I will also put in a link in the chat for an interest form that you can fill out if there are any committees that you're interested in joining. And I know they will definitely have you as a participant in some of those committees. If you are relatively new to AMAC in this industry, we do ask, I should back up. I should say that one of the best ways to take full advantage of your membership is to get involved. Nothing happens if you're just going to sit on the sideline. So it's more than just networking. It's more than just making sure you connect with the right people. But in all cases, it's a great way to help, again, push our advocacy efforts through the many committees that help support the national office. And lastly, I will be remiss if I don't mention this because I know Justina Mann will let me know about it after. Join a chapter. We have 6 chapters that are stood up right now: Detroit, Chicago, Baltimore, DC, Denver, LA, and Portland. And their member ranks have been rising, quickly over the last few months since we opened registration. Again, if you're involved at a national level, get involved at a local level and join one of the many chapters that we have stood up. We have 2 more that are in the queue to launch, Atlanta and Houston, and we'll be providing more information on those chapters when they come live. So also, I will drop that into those links into the chat for each and every one of you. So with that, I know I have to breeze through through the announcements real quick because I want to get to our roundtable right now. Let me introduce Alice Cheung. She's the Director of Restaurant Brand Portfolio for Paradies Lagardère. We have Geoff Alexander, the President and CEO of WowBow. And lastly, we have Neil Thompson, the Vice President of Digital for HMSHost, Avolta. I'm using it all. I'm just using HMSHost. If that's fine. Okay. I don't want Steve Johnson, on me about not using Avolta, but
neither do I, but I think we're good.
No, we're going to be good. We're doing good. First of all, I want to thank each and every one of you for participating in this panel. And really, the crux of it is we're looking at retail and dining in the airport space through a digital and virtual lens. And I want to go right off into it. And Geoff, I want to direct this to you. You are on the street side. You have units in the airports. But what were some of the, just a quick recap of some of the triggers that led to all this happening using mobile, digital, virtual restaurants, et cetera, even pre-pandemic?
So first off, thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here. And we are partners with both Paradies and HMSHost and love working with both of your organizations. You guys are fantastic. So look, WowBow's been around for 20 years. And going back to 2009, 2010, we started using self-ordering digital kiosks. Technology has been around for an abundance of time. And I think that, and I believe that the reason why you're seeing so much more adoption of it, it has to do with both generational as well as coming out of the pandemic, right? I mean, I have a child who's 25 and I have a child who's 13, and all they know how to do is push buttons, right? They push buttons and toothbrushes arrive, or they push buttons and food arrive, or they push buttons, they can play video games. This is everyday occurrence in everyday life. And the idea that it's now coming into the airports and has been in the airports is just evolution. Inside the restaurants, as I said, we've had self-ordering kiosks since 2010. We started using those because when we were voting for president back in 2008, we were forced to use machines to vote because the lines to use our regular ballots didn't exist, right? The lines were too long. So technology is everywhere from ATMs and so on. So it only is natural that you're seeing this evolution and continuing use of technology. And what's going on now is there's so much adoption rate. There's so many different ways to do everything from in your hand to from your computer, your desktop, to walking into the stores, that it's an exciting time, and we're moving at a rate that we've never seen it before.
Oh, excellent. Thank you. But Allison, Neil, I want to rope you in there because Geoff mentioned something that I didn't think of, and it's a generational thing. Yeah. So I'm looking at maybe our travelers within the terminal, within the airports. There was a study pre-pandemic that there was a generation of travelers that would be much younger, that would fall into the generation that Geoff is referring to, who will make up a greater proportion of travelers than the previous generation. So what are your thoughts in terms of the generational aspect in terms of implementing these technologies? I'll start with you.
Yep, I completely agree. So, I have 2 teenage daughters, 17 and soon to be 15, and they do everything with their phone. Like they don't, and I don't know if it's a pandemic thing or if it's a generational thing, but they don't want to talk to anybody. Sometimes not even me. So, they're at the age where they're texting me from their room to be like, is dinner ready? And it's funny because I came from the generation where, Oregon Trail was a big deal and we were all on our computer, the one computer lab playing the computers. So even somebody my age, we grew up with that and we're used to it. We're expecting to see it more and more. So, I just know that from even myself, younger kids, now the alpha generation that's coming up, this is something that they expect and they want to see, and it's second nature to them.
Deal?
Yeah, I think I'll add to that from an airport specific standpoint and talk maybe about the older generation, which I'm proud to be a representative of, where you got a little gray in your beard. And so I think that technology is definitely the young generation, like my kids, have an affinity for it. As people have said, they've grown up with it. I think if you look at the airport experience over the last 20 years, beginning with kiosks for check-in, and we're old enough to remember when you checked in at an airport by standing in a great big line and then another line to hand your bag over. And that has completely changed. And the regular traveler, the frequent traveler, has a very seamless experience through TSA pre-check, clear, doing everything using their mobile device to be able to converse with their airline. So over the last 20 years, the airport experience has dramatically improved in terms of efficiency. As a restaurant operator that operates in this space, that created a real challenge for us pre-pandemic, where you had the environment that was really technologically driven and people were comfortable using technology in the airport environment. And yet we were tied, as Geoff said, our business was tied to a restaurant model that had not adopted the same kind of technology. And I think as someone who comes from restaurant operations on the street, we always came back to our customers don't necessarily want QR codes or technology, et cetera, because they want hospitality. And I think that's really a way of saying we don't want to change, we don't want to evolve, and sort of a way of slowing it all down. And so I think that we're at this great point now that's emerged from the pandemic, where consumers of all ages have grown up with ATMs, self-order kiosks, et cetera, and are very comfortable using them. And so I think this environment of airports, more than any other, really lends itself to having a technology focus for the consumer.
Can I add on that? I'm sorry, because I think that's a great point. And I think what's important is twofold that comes out of that. The first is technology makes you think speed. And what you said about going through TSA and being able to communicate as you're walking to talk to your airlines and so on, it's just a perception of speed. It might not be faster, but you want to use technology because you believe it's faster. The other thing I think is very important that, both Alice and I talked about our children. Coming out of the pandemic, the older generation, I have gray in my beard as well, don't worry. We were all forced to use more technology to order our food, to use Zoom to communicate for work and talk to our grandparents and so on and so forth. So this other generation, not just a younger generation who's grown up on technology and wants to use it, the older generation who, as you said, has been doing it for travel, has also learned how to adopt technology, whether it's QR codes to self-ordering, because they've been doing it for the last 4 years out of necessity.
Listen, I'll point to my own mom, who's 73 years old. She can barely turn the TV on, but if you need her to order something from Amazon Prime, I mean, it's there that afternoon, and it's amazing. I mean, right? It is. But I want to go back to something that Neil said. You mentioned hospitality, and I'm kind of jumping down to one of the questions I might ask you guys as well. And when we're discussing about pros and cons, I'm immediately thinking that this puts like a barrier, puts tech between your customer and yourselves. Yeah. So what happens there if we are not dealing with some, because to me, dining can be pretty social. I still like to go in and sit down and order and eat and talk to, to somebody. What does that do in terms of our view of like customer service? Or is all this tech really going to be driven just by price point? The lower the price point, whatever, that's where we have the tech, and maybe where there's more of a story or narrative, then it's not so much of those.
I think that what makes the airport dining experience different than the street dining experience is that you can be in a restaurant and everybody in that restaurant, the person sitting next to you has 20 minutes until they've got to leave, and the person on the other side of you has 2 hours until they want to leave. So I think that for us, it's really about using technology to create this ultra flexible experience where the customer gets exactly what they want, but also exactly what they need. And so technology really fills in that gap. So we are certainly, as HMS hosts, not saying technology replaces people. We are saying that technology adds to a better experience in the sense that the customer is getting everything they want. Sometimes, if you've got 15 minutes until boarding and you see a line at Starbucks, being able to use mobile order and pay and get your coffee in 3 minutes is like, there's no thank you or smile or anything that's going to be better after you've waited in a line than that efficient experience. So I think hospitality begins to take on different forms. It's not necessarily, welcome to our restaurant, what can I get for you? Sometimes it's, if you want to go at the pace that you need for your specific situation, you can do that. And we call that, at HMSHost, we call that situationalization. So there's customization, personalization, and situationalization, and we're good at the other two. We're developing an emerging competency in the third one.
So Alice, is that a matter of just saying you're training your frontline folks to kind of like read the situation better and just, if you're in a hurry, I'm going to move faster. If not, then I can educate you better, and have true hospitality?
Absolutely. And I was going to very respectfully push back a little bit on you, Neil, when you said that hospitality is used as an excuse to not implement technology. We know that there are guests that want that Starbucks drink in 3 minutes. We understand. I'm one of those people. I do see the line and I say, oh gosh, let me just mobile order and skip that line. But I also know that traveling in general is a very challenging time for passengers. I'm a very frequent traveler. I did 101 flights last year, but I think the vast majority of our passengers do 1 to 5 flights a year, maybe. And they're not used to that experience in the airport. They don't know if they still have to take off their shoes. They don't know if they have to take the liquid out of their bags. And I think what we want to provide is that choice and the hospitality. So one of the things that Paradies Lagardère has always prided itself on is that we become an oasis for the traveler when they get through security and they're stressed and people have been yelling at them and they don't know where to go. They don't know where their gate is. When they get to our restaurant, they can take a deep breath and relax. When they get to our store, they can have the option of, which bottles of water they want, which chips they want. And now they have the option of, do I want to scan a QR code for a menu or not? Do I want to get that handheld menu? Do I want to pay via QR code? Or do I want somebody to come to me and take my credit card and swipe it through a machine so I can see what's happening? So just like Neil said, it's about the situation and providing our guests with that choice. And I think that's so important that we don't lose sight of our guest.
Yeah, I think we got to do away with the QR codes. Everything's QR coded now.
Let me just chime in that. First of all, I think QR codes are great because it allows you to be nimble and change your menu, raise your prices, lower your prices. QR codes has a benefit, but I think what both Alice and you are saying, there's such good in both of what they're saying. But as a restaurant operator has been using technology for over a decade, right? And the airports and the dining experience is becoming a little more adopting of it. 3 quick points for it. The first is the technology, the guest is going to use the technology as they want to use it. They may use the QR code, they may not. They may want to pay the table or kiosk, they may not. And that's what's great is you're giving options for the guest, right? The guest can choose how they want to do it. The second thing is in the hospitality business, and my PR team hates it when I use this, but I tried to coin it, right? The term hospitality, where we're trying to merge technology and hospitality into one thing. And the server or the bartender or the employee of the restaurant at the end of the day has to remember in the hospitality business to read your table. Does this guest not want to be spoken to and needs to go fast and I should leave them alone and get their food? Or are they traveling by themselves and they have time and I should give them a little bit more interaction, right? Like that's technology allows one or the other, or even both. And the last
I'm sorry, go ahead. Yeah, Geoff, go ahead.
The last point that's so important is the technology has to work for the employee as well. You have to remember that. You can't just put technology in there for the guest, because if it disrupts the operations or the team doesn't buy into it, or it's causing friction on one of the two sides, then the technology needs to get itself worked out.
No, I totally agree. And I think you mentioned again, use the word friction. I think that's obviously the biggest thing, or now, before it was the pandemic that hastened, implementation. But I think friction, reducing that friction is one of the drivers to implementing. I mean, are there any cons just off the top of your head to this, or just really depends on how you roll it out in terms of the tech?
I wouldn't say con, but I think that one of the challenges certainly is awareness. Alice said, most travelers are a few times a year and don't know, if you don't know whether you take your shoes off or what size liquid, you're certainly not going to know some of the technology that's available for you to be able to use to create your own experience. So I think that's partly time, and also partly, it'll happen over time. But I think it's also something that our airport partners can start to help us with, is messaging to consumers that there are better experiences available for you through these tools. So I think this is, there's a wave of adoption that's happening, and it's probably slower than we'd like, just because people don't necessarily know. But I think as time goes on, we're going to continue to tackle that.
Yeah,
I like to add that I don't think that I wouldn't also call it a con, but I think one of the friction points that we have is, as Geoff mentioned, is that we are in an airport environment, right? We have a landlord, we have two customers. We've got our customer that is, we sell the proposal to, they pick us, we get to operate, and then we have the consumer. And in a lot of the airports, there are airport-wide initiatives that are pushed down on us, and those, like Geoff said, may not integrate with our back-end system. So we may be forced to use some mobile ordering that doesn't talk to our KDS, doesn't talk to our POS, and it becomes an extra step for our team to have to do. And I'd love for, some of that dialogue to open up and say, like, okay, let's get this right. We want to adopt the technology, but we also want to make sure that it works. And our operations team says, yep, this is frictionless. We want to move forward with it, and we can make it frictionless for the guest.
And Alice, along with that, is none of this technology is ever made by restaurant people. So right, this technology is made by very smart people, but it's never tested in the real environment that we all live as restaurant people, from the employees' education level or understanding to even how the consumer is going to do it. And we're always forced to change our model and our business to adopt this technology, that you really have to have this technology. And I think, Neil, you're 100% right. The consumer comes in and has never seen this stuff before. I mean, my once I get through, security, because that's always the hardest pain point of doing it, whatever it is you're trying to do. I mean, I would love the opportunity of pre-ordering ahead, right? Which now exists in some airports, but it's never explained to you. It's never, you don't know if you have it, you don't know how to use it. And now I got to download an app, and the Wi-Fi doesn't work in the airport. And right. And obviously the number one headache of all of travel post security is not having Wi-Fi on the airplane, right? It just disrupts your entire endeavor. And if you could have that Wi-Fi on the airplane to order food, so when you land, to pick up the food, I know it exists and it's supposed to be there, but there's so much, to go back to the word friction, of trial and error of an adoption that has to, that it's great that it's here. And I'm sorry, I'm babbling here, but look, it's important that all businesses evolve and everybody innovates. And what's going on right now is such an unbelievable, incredible time in the travel industry for innovation and evolution. It is all pain points that will pay dividends in 24 months, right? In 24 months, it's going to be fantastic until the next technology comes. But right now, there's just a lot of learnings from all parties involved.
I think, there is an awareness. I think the behaviors are already there. But like Neil said, it's just not known that I can apply these behaviors in our space. And I think, and I was just looking at me thinking broadly here. Listen, we have now Starbucks and other various apps that people already use, so they know how to use it in the street. Now they're using it in the airport space. So I think that helps. But it's just I guess it's just a matter of, my challenge is it seems very segmented. Yeah, and Alice or someone mentioned that, like, you got to try to link up all the systems, and I've kind of been in favor of this, and I don't know how I'm going to get it off the ground, but to make a really geeky reference, there should be like one app to rule them all. Otherwise, I got my one app to do this, I got my one, and I'm just swiping constantly, and I'm juggling. My two kids are annoyed that, like, we're still in security, and my wife, but so it's a lot of things that I'm trying to juggle. If I had one thing and to do, one app that could do one thing versus I'm navigating from one to another. I don't know how we do that, but I'm assuming that there is at least a way where we can kind of let the awareness of these opportunities be known to the traveler, to Neil's assertion. I don't know if you guys want to comment on that. I know Geoff wanted to comment on the one app to rule them all reference. So
I don't want to comment and be like, yes, like that is everyone's wish. But just look, for the audience out there listening, that is what everybody wants, right? We all want that one-stop shop. But now what's going to happen is this airport uses a certain POS and this airport uses a POS, or this airport wants it done this way and this airport thinks it should be done. I mean, that's the nature of the business, right? We're all type A personalities, right? That's why we're successful, but that means we all have opinions. And it would be great if the app that I use at airport A works at airport B and C. Chances are I need a whole different app. I remember you used to have GoGo in-flight for internet, and there was some other one, right? And you had to have 2 different passwords and credit cards and all this stuff. It's a lot of moving parts to make things seamless. It is very difficult. But I'm with you. Let's figure it out.
Oh, definitely. I'm going to direct this. Go ahead, Neil.
Sorry. The other one, like I think the comparison I draw to this one app to fit them all is, I don't know about you guys, but how many streaming services you have on your TV at home, right? And I would love there to be one place where I could get all the shows I want and charge me $100 a month or whatever, but this $18 a month, $25 a month, this and that, and having to pick and choose and then evaluate. I don't know, do we watch Hulu enough to warrant? And I think that these are the decisions that as technology gets more pervasive in our entire society and our sort of lifestyle, this is all going to come at some point. But to your point, Geoff, what's it going to be like? What's going to be the lead one? I think there's lots of examples that we could all point to of where this is required.
And Neil, why can't I download Hulu for the airplane?
Now that's a little out of my but that's a great idea.
I think that was called cable.
We're all old enough to remember those days, but our kids have no idea what it was like to change channels.
Okay, so for some of the younger viewers or listeners, I remember as a kid growing up, there used to be a literal box that was tethered to my TV, and I would slide it. And God forbid if something happened to that box, and I'd have to put the little selector in between numbers just to get HBO. It was horrible. But yes, and anyway, enough of my challenges. But my next question really, I want to start with Alice and Neil, because you guys are the operators in the space. It seems like adoption in the airport side is a lot slower than on the street, and maybe it hastened because of what the pandemic did to us or taught us. But what are you doing on your ends to kind of obviously not just implement the change and incorporate some of the advances that like brands like Geoff's are doing, but looking even further ahead? What are some of the ways that you guys are kind of getting your teams to kind of like think of that, use that mindset?
I know on the Paradies side, we definitely are doing a lot of stuff on the back ends just to make sure that we can keep up with all these changes as they come, right? Back end system updates, strengthening our network capabilities at every single airport we do business in. As we win new packages, making sure that we have the network and capabilities to be able to implement whatever technologies. But then also just internally, in terms of our way of thinking, Paradies has for quite a long time now had this thing that we call our innovation boosters committee, right? So it's just a team of folks who are on the ground, out and about, and we look at things that are happening in the world and we bring it back to the team. We kind of all discuss and we're like, hey, here's this crazy idea that I've seen. Can we do that in the airport space? And we kind of do it a roundtable. We present at different meetings so that other people can chime in on it. And I think that's really been fun for us to be able to test new things. I don't know if you've seen, we rolled out a couple of hologram boxes in Toronto and in Charlotte. And the funny thing was that, Amazon Go is a big thing. More airports wanted to see it. We installed it. And I think one of the challenges we had is our travelers come up and they're like, what is this? There's a gate. Can I go in? What's happening? And, we said, hey, let's add on to the innovation and put a hologram box where somebody can stop in and just, get somebody talking to them and understand what the technology is. So that's kind of the things that come out of our internal innovation boosters committee that we like to roll out and test and pilot everywhere.
Yeah, I would underscore what Alice said. And I love the activation you did, Alice, at Toronto with the Santa Claus in the 3D box, and it was fabulous. And I think more of that is going to be great. I think the staff, to me, the staff members are the key to this, and it's really if you think about where we were just a couple of years ago, you had a grab and go, for example, and you had a person behind a cash register sort of standing there waiting for people to come and buy things, and then the business moves at the speed that person can kind of punch it in. I think that adding self checkout and taking that staff member, and this is not about removing the staff member, but it's about allowing the business to go at the pace of the consumer. And so the staff member gets repositioned to be what we call a hospitality ambassador. And so, yeah, they keep the shelves full and all the labels facing the right way, but they're also there if somebody's unsure of how to use the technology or has other questions, and just to try to facilitate it right through. I think the other thing is, two other quick points. One is awareness. We talked about a bit before. People don't necessarily know that we have these initiatives there. So the more that airports can do to help us say, hey, we've got Starbucks Mobile Order and Pay. Little Rock put up a sign in the pre-security area, a great big sign showing that there was mobile order and pay for Starbucks available. We saw a big increase in take rates on that. Vancouver put signage talking about our open table virtual waitlist, so you could reserve your table while you were in security. So I think more of that kind of thing of letting the consumer know what's in store for them on the other side of security while they're in maybe a part of the airport experience that doesn't necessarily move quickly and where they have time to absorb those kind of messages. And then the third point is positioning of the technology itself. We're in the process of revamping and refreshing our Burger King self-order process, much more like you see Panera do, where it's very visible, it's very present. So it makes a statement rather than be something the consumer needs to look for. It makes a statement as, this is the most efficient way to get through this experience. So I think at HMSHost, we're looking to our partners to help us, but we're also doing whatever we can on our side through our staff and the positioning of our equipment to help let people know that there's a better experience waiting for them.
So Geoff, as a brand owner in this roundtable, and you said you were implementing self-ordering kiosks long before any of this was happening, which is great. And I'm going to share a stat that I just found. It was from Deloitte that this is, I think, in 2023, 64% of diners prefer to order digitally on premises. And that's odd, and that's taking into account all age groups. So I mentioned that because, again, you mentioned that you guys have been using the touchscreen kiosks for a while. As a brand owner, then what are those types of conversations now when you speak with a Paradies or a host to say, hey, we should really incorporate this? Now, obviously, Alice and Neil are a little more aggressive and they're fine with it, but are a lot of those conversations getting better, whether it's airports or any other kind of environment?
So we have a number of airports across the country right now that we're in. We're in 7 different airports with 7 different partners, and at least 2 of them or 3 of them told us when we were going in that we were going to have self-ordering kiosks. And then on opening day, there were no self-ordering kiosks, and it wasn't because of the operator. It came back because of the airport. They were concerned about traffic flow, congestion, lines, and all these different reasons for it. So it's to me, again, the consumer is expecting it, number one. Number two, there's so much upside. When we put in self-ordering kiosks, and again, this is almost 15 years ago, check average went up $2 a person 15 years ago. Can you imagine what the check average would go up nowadays because of it? And the labor savings came in. And again, to Neil's point, it wasn't labor savings that we cut people. It was reallocated so we could give better service, so we could be faster, and we could do more to help the person. The reason why, I'm guessing why your stat shows 63% want to use it, the reason why they're doing it is they control the order. They're not having a mistake. They get what they want. And why they're doing it on premise as opposed to ahead of time is because they don't want their food to be ready. I mean, if you order Starbucks and you go pick it up, it could be sitting there for 10 minutes if you get stuck in traffic or get lost on the way or whatever it may be. Your coffee's cold. So of course you want to order it on premise or be able to ask questions or learn more or whatever it may be. So we want to see more technology in the WowBow environment. Because we've been playing in so much technology and in so many ways of doing it that we see the benefits from the business side of it and from the consumer side. I think that there is this desire across the ecosystem to have more technology, but then there are different bodies that have opinions or ideas or worry about actually implementing it when the time comes to do it for whatever different reasons may be.
I think your product and your operational process lends itself to technology.
100%.
It's very streamlined.
I mean, if you order in our restaurants, when we put in the self-ordering kiosks, you were able to hit done on the order, right? And you could order in as fast as 26 seconds, or you could sit there forever pushing buttons. But we had food to the consumer in under 54 seconds when we had self-ordering kiosks. I mean, you want to talk about speed of service and The errors went down, waste went down, labor went down, check average went up, and consumer sentiment skyrocketed. There's so much benefits. And again, that's 15 years ago. Today, there is an expectation, pure and simple. And I think it's great, Neil. You said there's a signed pre-security that I can make my reservation on OpenTable when I get post-security.
Yeah.
That is a tremendous win, I think, for you and the team and for anyone else who's doing it. The issue I take with it on the other side is a lot of these airports have that you can order on your phone and then go get it or even have it delivered to your gate. But there's so little knowledge that it exists, right? It isn't prevalent in your face.
Yeah, there's a last mile component that's probably missing, in that scenario, which is good. But so
we know that last mile issue very well from street side too.
No, I totally agree. And it's funny, I'm going to mention this to everyone. I have a set of questions that I was going to ask the group, and I had it in order, but because everyone here has been so great, I'm kind of jumping around. So I very much apologize to the panel. But Geoff mentioned something really, really key. When you implemented all that technology, a lot of your costs went down and the per ticket price went up. So Alice, Neil, I think you can't make a better case than that in terms of saying, okay, here's a concept X. We'll use WAP as an example because Geoff is here. And let's say this is why we need this type of technology in this space, because obviously it helps us. Listen, it's not foreign to anyone that's on this meeting right now that it's very expensive to operate in there, right? And we have all these costs going up. So wherever we can find margin and efficiency and drive the price check up, I mean, I think it makes sense. So are the conversations now that you guys are having with airports or any landlords or whatever, are they getting easier? Or do they not need to be had because people are just aware? Is it still an awareness issue? Alice?
Yeah, it's definitely getting easier. I think, when we had our WAP open, gosh, I don't even know it now anymore, Geoff, 8 years ago, maybe, in DCA, we definitely wanted to install self-order kiosks. We knew from operating the store that having that self-order kiosk is WABA is truly the best concept for that, because the food is ready, the food is there. We just need to take it out of the steamers and put it in a box and give it to a guest. But we face some challenges with that. I think it's different now. I think particularly post-COVID, more and more airports are asking for digital technology. The times where we have some friction with the airports is that assuring them that there still is that guest-facing associate who's going to be able to answer questions, bring down the nervousness a little bit, and still give hospitality for those that want it. I remember when I started in this industry, iPads at every table, at every seat was a big deal. And thankfully, in my opinion, we've moved away from that because I think it did add a barrier. I had a situation myself where I wanted to ask a question. Like I can't eat cheese before a flight, probably too TMI for this roundtable, but I wanted to take cheese off of my burger and nobody would help me with that. And I think that's where some of those worries about not having a great guest experience come in. And I think now that they know that we will have the digital kiosk, it is a choice and will provide service, helps allay a lot of those fears with the airports. But I know from a proposal perspective, and I know I'm on the call with a competitor, but from a proposal perspective, we are just going right ahead and putting in self-order kiosk with every rendering that we do. So there's no question about it.
And Alice, we did when we launched DC. I'm sorry, Neil, I know I'm interrupting you here. We used to have a handheld line buster. The manager would go out, or the employee would go out into the queue and start taking orders. So that was the idea of kiosk. That was the first inclination for it, but that was a big win for us back in the day.
Yeah, I think, Ramon, you started that question by asking about kind of the economic impact. And I think that if you are implementing technology because you think you're going to make more money, and that's the sole driver or the underpinning reason why you're doing it, I think it will be less than successful. This is about the customer, and this is really about saying, how do we utilize technology to provide a more flexible experience, a more fluid experience that fits with the nature of the airport environment? And so I agree with what my colleagues have said here. This is about really awareness, positioning the equipment in the right place. And I still think, Geoff, that things like Linebuster have out there with an iPad or something have their place, but certainly not on a table. Alice, to your point, that this idea that there is something that can sit on one technology, apps aside, and that'll be developed as we spoke about earlier, but that there's one technology like a tablet that can sit on top of all of our businesses in this collective environment and create a better experience. I think that probably 5 years ago, that was the prevailing thought, was we have to find something that makes everything better. And in the case of a competitor, it was iPads, but we're moving away from that to more tailored technology for that specific experience, based on the operating model of that brand. And so I love Wow Bao and other brands that self-order kiosk really lends itself to this super efficient experience. And we want more of that.
Yeah. My next question is just then, looking how this is going to affect RFPs going forward. And I will say it, I'm not really looking for Alice or Neil to comment on this, and I know you won't anyway. I mean, let's not hide from the fact that there are a lot of labor challenges in terms of the availability of it and the cost of it. And rightly or wrongly, I kind of see obviously this implementation of tech or any kind of innovation is going to do a lot to kind of mitigate that. Whether you're redeploying people elsewhere, whatever it is, I see is that's just going to help out all around. But does this mean then that we're looking, and I'm leaning in Geoff's favor here, but does this mean then that we really should start looking at some of the more national kind of like chains, like a Wow Bao, because they already have those things in place, or any brand where it's I'll just say Starbucks. Everyone, Starbucks is agnostic now, but like a Starbucks, everyone knows how to use the app, what have you, and it's just a matter of like bringing those behaviors into the space as opposed to just let's try to form fit this tech here. And again, rightly or wrongly, it feels like to me this is going to dictate in many ways what we start putting, or what airports are going to start asking for in some of these RFPs. Do you feel that the same way, and why? Wow, no one wants to take that on. I'll let Geoff, if you want to tackle it.
Yeah,
Geoff.
look, I mean, I'll start it. I'm not as involved in the RFP process, right? Obviously, we partner and we want to get as many wins as possible, but you have to look, and I said this earlier, you have to constantly evolve and innovate. And if you look at street level and what people are doing, it naturally is going to translate into every other facet of the industry, right? Now, number one, it is so difficult to find labor on the street. It's got to be so much more difficult in the airports. And then you get into that you have to go through badge process and you have to wait to get hired and all these things. So technology can help bridge some of that gap, right? If you have self-ordering kiosks, if you have whatever digital ordering, right? You can afford to have less people working, especially, it could be seamless to the consumer. But technology is only growing, and as fast as we're growing today, it's much slower than it's going to be tomorrow. And we have to acknowledge that technology is going to continue to be part of everyday lives. I mean, you look at what's going on with AI and in the drive-through space, and and it's only becoming smarter. And those of us on this panel right now, we are the early adopters. We are the ones who are willing to learn it and try it because it's necessary for our business. The consumer is 18 months or 36 months behind us, right? They don't have the insight to what we have. So it's our job to know what's coming. It's our job to know what exists, and it's our job to give feedback on how to utilize it correctly. But I think it's very important. It's very important to constantly be trying to embrace technology and find ways, as Neil said, to make it better for the consumer and a better experience for the consumer. And as I said earlier, it's got to work for every member of the employee staff. And then, as Alice said, it has to work for that other partner of yours, that landlord, who has an expectation of how it's going to go.
So I don't think anyone. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Alice.
Yeah, I was going to touch on whether the question you asked about whether or not we'd all go towards more national brands, and I don't think so. I think airports have truly embraced local. We love to support our local communities. We love to have the different local brands represented in the airports. As a traveler myself, if I'm flying to Denver, I want to try something that Denver is known for, right? I don't want to see the same thing at every airport, with the exception of a handful, I would say, that, like you said, are agnostic. Wow Bao being one of them. But I don't think that airports are going to ask for big national brands solely because of technology. I think there is an expectation that we have technology woven through our experience and what we provide to the guests. But yeah, gosh, how boring would it be if every airport had
Well,
all the same brands?
well, let me put. I'm sorry, Geoff. Let me push back on that because I apologize. I didn't mean that it was going to lean more heavily in one way. It's going to be all national brands. I think it would certainly would probably lean that way, just depending obviously on the market. I don't think local or any bespoke proprietary stuff is going to go away because you still want to be representative of your communities. But I was just thinking, is there going to be, listen, I was talking to someone before, this is probably 7 8 years ago, and everyone on here can probably appreciate this. I was half joking, not half joking, I was kind of predicting, like, don't be shocked if like you find a Burger King that wins a contract soon. Now this was like 8 years ago, and people thought I was crazy because, again, people had left that traditional non-trad traditional like tradition national brand away because we were moving in some direction. And what do you have it? I forgot which airport. I think Burger King's won a couple. So I think that's what I'm saying in terms of like maybe we're reconsidering now being open to those who these national brands because they are more apt to test these technologies on the street in different environments. And so far, the behavior is there and the awareness is there, minus them having a presence in the airport. That is. So I just thought maybe that's where it was going. But Neil, I don't know if you feel differently or not on that end.
It's not my place really to comment on, RFP outlook
Very good.
and national versus local, but I agree with what Alice said. Being able to provide a taste of the local communities is incredible. And I think that, I look at QR code as a good example where we have QR code in our dine-in restaurants. It is not meant to replace the server. And we have it in many restaurants that would never think about necessarily having that on their street side restaurant as a tool. Because when you go out with your spouse or, significant other to have a night out, you are looking for a certain kind of experience. Same restaurant in an airport, I've got a different time constraint, different sorts of anxieties. And as a tool to be able to pay your bill, for example, now it's putting more control in the hands of the guests to go at the pace that they want to go. And so I come back to that term situationalization and using technology to be able to complement the exact experience that the consumer is looking for in that moment. And that is, regardless of the name on the front of the restaurant, that's incumbent upon us to be able to develop a competency, at which we have, and deliver that great experience to the customer, regardless of how much time they have.
Geoff, did you want to comment on that, or?
I just want to say that, I think that the one great thing that these airport partners, the hosts, the Paradies of the world can do is they can introduce technology to the operator. It can go the other way, right? Just because I've been using technology for 15 years, we go open up a Wow Bow in another airport, we put technology in there. But if I'm one of these airport partners, operators, and we love this technology and I want to partner with a smaller group, they can teach that group now and help elevate them, and they take it back to their business. So which I think is a great point. And at the end of the day, we all know the large brands are going to have the best technology, right? They're going to have the money to play in that sandbox. They're going to have the ability to influence how the technology is used. Some of them are actually going to have proprietary, and the rest of us can't use it. But the learnings that can go both ways, and the Paradies and the HMSHost of the world are these conduits to help get it to the small operator, to the large operator, and then some of the small operators like myself, WowBow, who's been using the technology, turns around and then gets it to Paradies, and Paradies is like, hey, we should use this somewhere else. And Host is like, wow, look at what else we could be learning and doing and bring into our rest of our portfolio.
Gotcha. I want to pivot a little bit, or very slightly, because we've been talking about tech, which for the most part, it's tangible and sometimes not tangible. We didn't really talk about. Well, I wanted to bring up environments, our own environments. So, the first Starbucks I think opened in Houston, where it's pickup only. Order through app, just pick it up straight. I look in the street, and Chipotle by my house, there's a line dedicated just to pick up. And you're seeing more and more of that. Chick-fil-A's done a lot. McDonald's, etc. Are we also looking at maybe innovating and changing our or having to consider changing some of our physical spaces as well? And I'll open that to Allison and Neil to address.
Yeah, great question. I think what I see, and Geoff would be able to comment maybe more, but what I see in street restaurants is the bringing of the consumer closer to the kitchen and the people that are preparing the food. And this middle part of a counter with cash registers along it, you're starting to see that either shrunk or removed entirely in street side restaurants. So I think that's a trend that we will continue to see in airports. I don't have to tell anybody here that it's expensive to rebuild what you currently have and start tearing out counters and redoing it as quickly as maybe things are changing. But I think that's incumbent upon us to really stay on top of that kind of trend. But I think, as I look at the restaurant, especially the QSR landscape, McDonald's to me is kind of the gold standard of sort of the way that they've led through giving the consumer the power to get that commodity, that Big Mac, in exactly the way they want, whether they want it delivered to their house at 2 a.m. using Uber Eats, whether they want to use the drive-through on their way to soccer practice, or whether they want to use a self-order kiosk, or whether they want to sit down in a dining room and enjoy that product. And that's exactly, I think, kind of the model that the industry is starting to follow. And so, and we're right there with that.
Yeah, just to piggyback off what Neil said, I agree. It's hard. It's very expensive to change what's already there. But and I mentioned earlier, just with RFPs and responses to those RFPs, we are just going ahead and we are rendering the kiosk and making it known that that's what we would like to do. I know our IT team is going in and putting like plugs everywhere and ports everywhere. So if we ever decide later on that maybe we should do a self-order kiosk here, it's easier to plug in versus having to go back and retrofit it. So those are the things that we are doing just to prepare for things like this and make sure that it's not an expensive, heavy lift later on down the line.
Gotcha. From the restaurant size is I don't think we really get a choice in what the size is going to be. We're sort of told, hey, this is how much space can you work? Can you make it work? Right. I go the other way. I mean, the hard part is having too much space, right? That is a challenge to fill the space and create more to it. But as a restaurateur, as an entrepreneur, I love the challenge of trying to fit your concept into it. And to go along with Neil, at the end of the day, we're serving food. So the kitchen has to be the most prevalent space of it, right? Because you have to make your food correctly. And I think that, as Al was just saying, having the technology of a self-ordering kiosk or something to that effect, it allows you to remove some of that other noise in the restaurant or in the space that isn't really utilized. But good problem to have if it's like, how much space do you want? We haven't found that problem yet.
That's rare.
No, definitely. But let me expand a little bit on that, and I want to bring this up because I wrote about this in, I know the date, it was like November 2019, and that was about virtual restaurants and ghost kitchens. I predicted there would be a use for it in the airport space for many reasons. Obviously, you can make better use of real estate. There hopefully would never be a real estate problem. That kind of thing. But then the challenge, obviously, is we talked about it earlier, the last mile component. Do you see, and I think, Geoff, you can comment on this because you guys are doing something similar with not a virtual restaurant, but like something similar with WowAbout. But do you guys see this type of concept having some legs in the space? Because I know RDU has it deployed, and I think one more airport, which escapes me at the moment. But I just wanted you guys to comment on that.
So we've been doing dark kitchens for, sorry, you want to go first? Go ahead.
Sure. Thanks, Geoff. I think there's a difference between virtual kitchens and ghost kitchens. I think that ghost kitchens, to me, are multiple brands, multiple storefronts sharing one kitchen. And that really kind of emerged through the pandemic as something that, whether it was Grubhub or Uber Eats, you could use these platforms to get this stuff from these kitchens that were kind of popping up all over the place. Virtual kitchen, to me, is a restaurant that doesn't exist as a bricks and mortar. It strictly exists on your device or some sort of self-order kiosk, similar to what you mentioned in RDU. I think that both of them probably have a place. I think that it's going to be interesting. That's not something that the consumer is necessarily used to using as a forward-facing concept. I think using your device, and I don't know whether this Jimmy John's sub is coming from a ghost kitchen or whether it's coming from the store down the street of my house. And maybe I don't even care. But I think how the consumer interacts with those types of concepts as a bricks and mortar, I don't know that the consumer's been asked to do that in the marketplace, in the general marketplace yet. So I'm not sure how long it's going to take. But I think from an efficiency of space to be able to offer more variety, I think that it's coming. But I'm not sure exactly what format it's going to take. Sorry, Geoff. Thanks.
No, you're fine. So we've been doing dark kitchens. From 2020 to 2023, we did 700 of them across the US and Canada. What we do is we sell our product to another restaurant and they sell it out their back door on the third-party delivery platforms. And if you look at that space, and I agree with how you describe virtual and ghost, just, you know, I 100% am aligned with what you're doing. But if you look at how the entire virtual, or what some of us in the field are really calling the digital restaurant experience, is constantly evolving and changing. This goes to what you were saying, Ramon, about Reef and what Reef did at RDU, where they have a wall and you here's a kiosk with a number of different restaurants or a number of different menu items, and out it comes in a cubby. And if you look at what Kitchen United did in their partnership with Kroger, where they opened up these spaces inside the grocery store where they ran 4 or 5 different brands. So when you're shopping, you can then take home dinner. To me, it's evolution and it's constant innovation. And what looks like today as a ghost kitchen is different than what's going to look like in 2 years. But what Reef has done and what Kitchen United was trying to do, that to me, as a consumer going through the airport, if there was a space I could go to that had, you know, 7 restaurants that I could just pick and choose from, and then my wife and my son and my daughter and I could all eat from one place without running around trying to find it and waiting on 6 different lines, that would be a huge win for us at some point. Now, I don't know how you handle, you know, space and who gets top billing in marketing and how you figure out royalties. Like, that's not what I'm involved in, right? But I think that the consumer is going to be dictating how it's different. And if you look at the 3 PDs, right, DoorDash, Uber, and Grubhub, the number one complaint that a guest has who's ordering is, I really want to eat this and I really want to eat that, but I have to order twice and now the food came an hour apart. And the 3 PDs are trying to figure out how to make one-stop shop and have the one driver pick up food without going out of the way. That would be a big win from a consumer standpoint inside the airport. Last thing I'll say is we have approached a number of different people. No one's bidden on it yet, but maybe one of you will, to say, hey, our product, why don't you sell our bao as a menu item inside this other environment? If they don't have a breakfast component, we have breakfast bao. If they don't have a dessert environment, we have dessert bao. And so you're able to, it's sort of like a ghost or virtual or dark, where you're combining menu offerings between different environments. And I understand the stickiness behind the scenes with royalties and brands, so we'll ignore that for right now. But I do think there's evolution that's coming that is going to be really, really important to how the consumer can interact with multiple brands at one time.
I love that you can ignore that, Geoff, because I can't. It's what I do day in and day out. And that's certainly some of the challenges we have with these, you know, ghost kitchens where you're trying to fit multiple brands into one. Until very recently, there were brand franchise agreements where it's like, my kitchen can only be used for my food. You can't even share storage and all that. And thankfully, I think that's starting to change as more and more brands get into the non-traditional space and they realize, like, we've got this 1,000 square feet, like, and we have to propose 2 different concepts. Like, will you be at least willing to share back of house storage and your mop sink or something? And those conversations are being had, and thankfully most brands are starting to evolve on that. But, you know, being a brand owner, Geoff, if you want to talk to your peers and get them to understand that, you know, the airports are a tremendous space. There's a ton of traffic. There's a ton of eyes that can go through and see your brand and try your food, even if it's maybe shared with somebody else. So again, love that you can ignore it for now.
Probably not for long. So this has been great. I truly appreciate everyone's time. I do have one last question, and I think this is the best way to kind of like to end the roundtable, and that is just looking into your crystal balls. You know, what's the next thing? You know, what is the next technology? And Geoff, if you could speak to the street side, and Alice and Neil maybe on the airport side. But what is that next thing that we might see within the next 5, maybe even 10 years? So I'll start with Geoff.
Well, I have 3 answers for it. The first is obviously AI is going to become its own animal and its own beast. And I don't know how that's going to, you know, play out. I'm not on that side of the business. I don't have that crystal ball. My second answer I give to everyone is I didn't see the pandemic coming. So when people ask me what's happening 5 or 10 years, I don't have the answer because I don't know what's going to happen. But the answer that I can give you about what's going to be coming in the next 5, 10, it is going to be unbelievably exciting. And being part of the hospitality industry. One thing I always say is pre-pandemic, we were all in the hospitality industry, and post-pandemic, we're all in the food business. And I'd really like to see us get back into hospitality more than anything else. I think technology can help us doing that, but I think it's very important that the more people who are traveling, the more opportunities that they're getting to be out there. Technology is going to make it extremely, extremely exciting ride. And thank you for having me. And shout out to Justina on the call here, who keeps writing how great this on the chat, how great this session.
Thank you, Justina. Go ahead, Alice.
Yeah, so I think what's really exciting to me at the end of the day, Paradies Lagardère, we are operators. We are in the business. We want to make sure that our operators feel really good about providing the service to the guests. But what really excites me is just more of that back of house stuff that we can do to take some of the challenges from the back of house away from our operators and be able to provide that great guest service up front. We're starting to use more and more like, AI when it comes to inventory management and making sure that, the data that we get from the airports, wherever we can get data, jives with, okay, look, we know there's going to be a big surge coming. We need to order more inventory. We need to do whatever. Or we know that these are when the ebbs and flows of passengers are coming, and this is how we have to schedule our staff. I think that's exciting for us, so that, those friction points get taken care of, and then our guests are our primary focus.
Neil, take us home.
Sure. Thank you very much. So I think that if I look in my crystal ball, I see the ability to get any product you want in any kind of way you want. And I talked about McDonald's, and you can get a Big Mac in all of these different kind of iterations depending on the circumstance you have. And I think that the future is about giving great food to people, whether if they have 2 hours and want to chat with the bartender and have a great plate of food and a couple of drinks. Absolutely, we'll still have that in 10 years. If you want a hamburger without cheese, brought to the gate, or ready for you when you land, or in some other place like a locker, or ready at the storefront, I think it's that ultimate flexibility, so that the consumer doesn't have to trade off the amount of time they have with the type of meal they want. And that I see as the future. And so it's a fully integrated experience where the consumer has a really easy way of choosing exactly what they want. And at HMSHost, that's what we're building.
Excellent.
And we're going to end on the note of saying, in 5 to 10 years, what is the future going to hold? It's going to hold hundreds of wow bows in airports.
There we go. Speaking into existence. Although I have a challenge, Jeff. I have one criticism. There isn't a wow bow in West Palm Beach, Florida. So if you could please make that happen, I would be very.
I love flying through PBI and all. Like, talk to these other two on the phone. give me 70 square feet. I'll figure it out.
You said you didn't want to worry about royalties, so no problem.
Right.
Excellent. Well, thank you again, guys. Alice, Cheung with Paradies Lagardère, Neil with HMSHost, and Geoff with Wow Bao. I appreciate the time, and I hope everyone on the call enjoyed this. We are recording it. We will be making it available on our YouTube channel in about a week or so. And everyone, stay warm. I think I'm the only one in a warm weather state. So, but it is raining. There's that. But stay warm and stay safe, and have a great weekend, everybody. Take care.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.